Hello, my name is Parker and welcome to my channel if you're new here. If you haven't gotten the chance to check out any of the previous installments up to this point, I do suggest you go do so now, as we are on day 19 of Echoes of the Past October, a month-long prompt event being run by none other than Typically Untypical. If you haven't gotten the chance to go check them out, please go do so now. Today's prompt is, while some monsters are born, others are created. But the worst monsters are those who believe themselves to be heroes. E.H. Knight, the four before me. I do apologize if you struggle to hear me today, as I am losing my voice due to being pretty badly ill. There are some trigger warnings for today's episode, so as always, go check that description, and viewer discretion is advised. Without any further ado, this is Heroine by me. Roman stood for everything right in the world. He was the hero. He was everything that was good in the world, and he would tear the world apart in order to bring peace, happiness, and rightness in the world. He wanted to relinquish the darkness in the world, even if that meant he had to have blood on his hands. The world respected him. He was praised for his views and the way he handled situations. He had a pair of friends. They told him they weren't heroes, and he didn't know them personally, but they worked with him more often than not. Some of the people saw him as a team, even though they stated they didn't really agree with Roman quite often, yet they never did anything he didn't approve of. He was strong-willed, and, well, so were the villains. Not one of them would just give up anything that he needed them to. For years, he would just throw them into the prison, but they just kept breaking out of them, and it was nearly impossible to keep them in a place that they didn't want to be. On a particularly hard day, Roman closed his eyes for a second, sighing mildly. A loud whooshing noise came beside his ear. His eyes snapped open as he looked over at the man who was sitting right next to him. It wasn't someone who he would have expected to find him, let alone sit with him. "What are you doing here, Shadowcaster?" he murmured towards the man he had failed to imprison just a few days before. The man chuckled dully, watching Roman as though he could see right through the strong demeanor that Roman had pulled quickly. "I don't believe it's technically illegal for me to be here right now," he answered, leaning back and watching the stars. Roman stared at the darker man. "Well, I suppose I guess it could be according to your morals," he stated after pausing as he kept his eyes trained on the sky. He seemed so soft while he sat there in his villain suit, watching the sky. "You know who Luna is, right?" he mumbled as he finally looked down at Roman. Roman flinched. Luna was a villain who died in a battle between them a few weeks back. He hadn't wanted her to die. It was an accident, but it was one less villain shrouding the world in darkness. He slowly nodded, and Shadowcaster kept speaking. "She was a good kid. She was just fighting against unfair circumstances." He growled, his eyes turning a darker shade of violet. "It's funny that those who are better off and don't have the experience of those things get to make the rules, isn't it?" he hissed out, and Roman could no longer make eye contact. "I think those people are the true villains, don't you?" he said, his voice still accusing. He seemed to know that Roman wasn't going to respond, so he kept talking. "I think those who claim to be heroes are the true villains. After all, only villains make unfair rules to games that people are required to play," he muttered, looking away from Roman and back toward the sky. And in the moment, he just realized how exactly right Shadowcaster was. How true it was that the world was unfair, and it shouldn't be that way. Roman had held himself and everyone to such high standards because he considered himself a good guy. But maybe he wasn't a good guy. Maybe he was worse than the people he was fighting against. I do hope you guys have enjoyed today's episode, and I will see you all tomorrow. Have a wonderful day, and please be safe, everyone.